Good morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 6 and episode number 910 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada, always 100% Canadian, and of course, Beaverific. Today, recording day is Wednesday, May 20th, 2026, birthday recovery day. Although, to be totally honest, the birthday was the recovery day. There came a point yesterday evening where my Beaver sweetie went to go play volleyball with his group, and I was supposed to go, but I was just plain exhausted. Um, and he went anyway for a little bit. He really tried to get me to come, and I was like, "Sweetie, I've been telling you all day uh, how wiped out I am." So I didn't, but he came back early, realizing that he too was rather exhausted. Uh, but I think it was 5 minutes after he left, and this is not because I do not love my sweetie, but I was like, "Oh, the gift I wanted for my birthday, some time in the house alone, introvert heaven." After 13 consecutive days of having at least one other person more than just my Beaver sweetie and I, yeah, I was exhausted. So like I said, no big whoop whoop celebration. We went out for a little birthday breakfast. Um, Came back home, did the second show, and then the rest of the day, uh, pretty much um, did not much. To be totally honest, I was too pooped to pop. We had dinner, uh, and didn't go all out. We just had some leftovers from the party because I made a monumentous amount of food. Um, but for my Beaver Sweetie's birthday party, had we did do the cake thing and the card thing, um, and then I think that was around 6:30 ish, and around the time he was getting ready to go to volleyball, and I was pretty much ready for bed then, actually. I really was. Uh, but I knew that if I went to bed then, I'd be like, wait, up at midnight, and that would like throw my clock off. So I did manage to stay awake until 10. But yeah, and then I went to bed. So my oh yeah, there was some hot chocolate somewhere in there too. So yes, my very exciting, raucous, wild birthday. I do plan to do something. I would love to have a little get together with some friends of mine over here at some point, but it may be uh, It could be, it could potentially be, um, several weeks after my birthday. A little delayed party. Uh, but that, I'm actually used to that because given, that, 3 years out of 7, when your birthday falls on May 2/4 weekend, usually nobody's ever around to celebrate your birthday anyway, so so, I'm used to, celebrating it, either the weekend before or a couple weeks after or something like that in order to be able to have, the people I love close to me, because really it's about the occasion and not necessarily the day. But yes, Kid Saucy, yeah, my God, I understand that feeling. Well, yeah, I mean, especially, I have the advantage on that front of not having children at home. Right? Little people who, especially when they're younger, who are constantly seeking my attention. Um, although I do have a beaver sweetie that's constantly seeking my attention, but he'd kill me for saying that. Ah, oh my word. Yeah, but no, in that sense, I mean, not that we wouldn't love to have children. We would love to have children if anybody if anybody out there's got one to spare. We would love to have children, but we don't. So we don't have that particular dynamic. But yes, mothers, fathers, I get you. Everybody needs a time alone. My uh, sister-in-law, I guess, through uh, you know, union here, was just here over the course of the weekend, and she said that, yeah, the last week there was like one day where husband had gone off to work, and the kids, and they're now teenagers, and they're out doing their things, hanging out with friends, and she was just home alone for about an hour and a half. She says, I just sat there with a cup of tea and did nothing, and it was good. So yeah, you're hitting a certain age when time alone at home is the thing that brings you joy. Compared to like 21-year-old me who was always wondering where the party was, you know? It's like, oh boy, uh, things change, things change. And you know what? I'm just as happy, which is really interesting. Um, the car also has left the laneway and is on the way to the spot, where it's going to get, the engine that we've been, needing since February. So yes, because yesterday was a false start. My beaver sweetie had gotten up early and made himself all handsome and presentable, to get down there, and before he got his shoes on, got the call and said, "Yeah, that's not happening today." It's like, "Ah." And then he's like, his equivalent of, "Did I shave my legs for this? Really?" He does not like getting up very early, let's put it that way. So, but yes, that's the way on the way, and, hopefully, we will get it back, before the end of the week, and, well, at least before the end of, next week, because we are hoping, to go camping, and we will need, the car with the engine because, there's no way, we are going to, make a trip, that is, more than 5 to 10 kilometers away from home with an engine that could stop at any moment. So, yeah, it would be nice to, it would be nice. But yes, oh, yeah, indeed, Kitnona Carol, the other side of the coin, empty nest is terrible after a while. I can imagine that too. Yeah. It's like, y you don't you don't want the activity to be gone permanently. You just like it to be dosed. Meted meted out at regular and convenient intervals. Well, life doesn't work that way. Um, so yeah, lots going on here. Mental, uh, health is great. Still a little tired, but much less tired than yesterday, and, for some reason, do not ask me how. Do not ask me how. But So, you know, the other day when I was telling you on that weight thing, I got down to 170 pounds. Well, today I'm up to 176. I do not know how I gained 6 pounds uh, over the last 4 days, and I certainly do not know how I gained three yesterday. That's very weird. Because trust me, this I did not slam my face down into the cake and eat it all. I had a very reasonable slice. So eh, such is life. All right. Let's see. Well, today, kids and cubs, uh, we got through the very big policy announcements. One of the things, the big story yesterday, specifically, of course, was um, the fact that another one of the first major projects that went. Uh, that were declared in the first bunch, which is the Nouveau Monde graphite mine, has indeed started. We talked about that yesterday since the announcement had just been made, so we will not go too much more deep in it. It's in yesterday's bonus Beaver show if you missed it. However, there was an interesting tidbit that I had not picked up upon yesterday, and that is that it would appear that at a certain moment, the project took a particular hit uh, because of things that happened at GM, and there was not necessarily um, as much need for a certain amount of the graphite at that time, or how to put it, a big amount of the graphite that had been spoken for would no longer be needed. It seems that last fall, General Motors, which was one of the mine's main clients, um, was basically lost as a client because automakers had scaled back their electrical vehicle ambitions at the time. So the part that we mentioned yesterday about the federal government having agreed to a 7-year offtake for 30,000 tons of graphite concentrate annually, which ironically creates a stockpile. uh, but that was not for the purposes of stealing a Pierre Polyev idea and creating a stockpile that we can use as leverage, but in ensuring it was basically uh, filling that order gap. So substituting, taking what GM would have taken over those years and buy it for itself. So maybe it will be repurposed for military uses, batteries for those types of things, or extra storage or something. I don't know what other purpose it will be, but basically the federal government stepped in and said, well, whatever GM was going to order for the next 7 years, we'll take that as an order. That way, you're not losing any additional money. And then now the federal government has a resource, uh, I guess, that it can use as it is needed for other projects, or to sell at a later date, perhaps when the value of it increases, or something of the sort. So that was an element of the plan that wasn't obvious to us yesterday until some intrepid journalists put a few things together. And that is, uh, I'm not sure if Aya Dufour of iPolitics is the person who put that together, but I found that information in some reporting by them. Sometimes that's why it's important to read the smaller media, you know, like the Trilliums and the Maples, Logic, the Conversation, that type of stuff, because you get some additional detail that does not necessarily make the major papers or major publications, and it adds some color and texture to the story, because now it's not only um, how would you put it? It's not only a major project story, it's not only a critical mineral story, it's not only an electrification story, it's also a story of the federal government coming in and making a strategic decision was to keep a project going that is going to have future benefits rather than telling a company, well, yeah, okay, well, that's just business. I guess that happened to you. You're going to have to make it work, which is also, another way to go. But given that we have some very specific things that we want to achieve, and again, we want to do it at, quote unquote, speeds never seen before or something like that. Uh, can't remember the exact words of the prime minister, but doing it at a speed that we hadn't seen in a while anyway. Um, then when an auto company decides that, hey, the game has changed on EVs right now, maybe we need to readjust what it is that we are going to be producing. Um, you make a strategic decision to step in. Now, it's going to be very interesting with all these decisions by these car companies to scale back on their EV production happened before, clearly, the war in Iran, the war on Iran. So, um, now that the price of gas is high again, and in Canada in particular, there are EV incentives. Other nations might be doing those. We cannot count on the United States clearly to be one of those nations, which, uh, given the size of the market, is probably overweight on the drag that it has. So it probably requires a whole lot more nations to be going the other way. But, there is way more incentive now, given that we now, at least in Canada, given that we have government incentives and the rising price of gas, and it's not gonna be going down anytime soon. Uh, EVs, might be just sitting there going, "Well, how do you like us now?" And, purchasing and production decisions, may be changing soon. So, this, more than as the conservatives would like to frame it as, is this confirmation that it was just a silly and stupid idea to go the electric battery route and to try and become a hub for EVs and all that kind of stuff. We should have just stuck with the old, gas combustion and stick with the US and all that kind of stuff. This situation, given the decisions of the US administration to foolishly and recklessly go into war and, affect global supply and prices for years to come, uh, may be the thing that actually ends up saving EVs or proving that was just merely a speed bump or a blip on the way to what is the future of electrification, and might be the final push as well. The event that goes, okay, you know what? Let's, you know, we were dragging it out. We were not. Let's just go. It was like we literally have the option now of not having uh, our means of production tied uh, to a resource that is finite and constantly fluctuating in price, often based on the egos or ambitions of certain people who probably shouldn't be having that authority to pull the world in these directions in the first place. Um, you know what? Let's just bite the bullet and make the move to just reduce this unnecessary uncertainty and unpredictability for the long term. It's going to be a permanent gain. Let's just do it. I think there's more and more people that are just throwing their hands up and just saying, you know what, I'm tired of this ride. So if that is indeed the case, and that's what proves to be true, then right, stepping in at this specific moment in order to fill that gap will definitely, a couple of years down the road, prove to be a very wise investment for those who only practice politics for the moment. right? It leads gives them an opportunity, of course, to say, "Oh, well, there you go. There goes the government again, picking winners and losers," all that type of stuff. So again, might be a little trickier to do when it comes to a graphite mine, given that, uh, y- if you're a conservative, you can't both want to create a stockpile of these critical minerals that you can use as leverage against the United States and then complain when the government is stepping in to buy 30,000 tons per year uh, for 7 years um, in order to keep the company that actually is going to mine a lot of that for the foreseeable future, um, to keep it uh, in a financially stable state for a year or two. Well, in this case, seven. But I doubt the dip will last to 7 years. So this, I feel, will not will become a interesting point of trivia, but not necessarily a something that will make people very upset, much like the federal government going in to support Algoma Steel at a particular time, given it is, the only company in Canada that does the thing that it does. And if a country doesn't have the capacity to produce its own steel, it is much less independent and autonomous. You have other considerations than just the economic one there, right? You want to maintain your national autonomy. So, while a lot of people are, again, not happy with government handouts, very few people, other than those of the utmost bad faith, would criticize that one because there are other strategic, very critical implications to actually being a country and a player, definitely being a G7 country, that are involved with that decision. So, but this is, like we mentioned, the third, I think it is, of the 5 projects, that were first named that are underway. The second one in Quebec, if we are talking about, things that are, politically strategic. I went to take a look at, 338.com, to see what, recent federal polling numbers are. And while there is no change from the previous week for the horse race between the Liberals and Conservatives, it's still 46 to 35, and still with the seat count showing 221, 294. There is something interesting going on that hasn't I haven't heard a lot of people talking about lately, and I will just put it here. If we are looking at this graph here, the seat projection, and let me see if I can, um, let's do this. There we go. That will give me a little extra height. And let's center this here. Actually, let's bring it a little up here to the middle. That will be better. And okay, I want you to look at the light blue line, which is the Bloc Québécois line here, right? So here it go. Let's say we're starting here. This goes to June of 2025. So about a year ago, would say that the Bloc Québécois would have picked up 22 seats. When we get to August, it's showing 19. We get to October, the bloc is starting to gain some ground, 25, just as the sort of initial honeymoon period for the Liberals. If you see up top is going down, 165 after the election. We keep going. We get to December, the bloc's at 27. You see the Liberals down to 167 at that time. And here we get to a peak right about here, just before February of this year, where the Bloc is at 31, and the Liberals have just come off their lowest point, where they would have 153, and are starting to rise again. So this is where the around the time where the Conservatives under Pierre really start falling, soon after the leadership review, where he got confirmed with that alleged 84%, right here. And then you see the Bloc hits a peak of 31. So since just before February of this year until now, the Bloc number, if there was an election to be held today, would have 20 seats. That's a loss of a third of the seats that they would have had if an election were held at the end of January. That's not good for Monsieur Blanchet, and that's definitely not good for the bloc. And with a provincial elections coming, where one of the parties wants to run on separation, and that party is very closely tied with Monsieur Blanchet. Um, well, there seems to be no appetite for this at this particular moment, given the threat that the United States poses. And now Mark Carney is not only announcing that the port expansion in Contrecoeur has already started, but now this project here at Nouveau Mont Graphite Mine has started. That's doing a lot to shore up the base in Quebec. Just a little political strategy happening there, quietly in the background that not a lot of people are noticing here. But um, yeah, there seems to be a drop there in support for the bloc right now in the province of Quebec. Just you know that every now and then. Speaking of polls that we would want to look at, uh, another province we would like to take a look at. That would be interesting to take a look at right now is British Columbia because um, well, Premier David Eby has been getting some how would I put has been getting some media attention lately, based on what's been going on with the Prime Minister and Danielle Smith, uh, particularly with regard to the MOU. Right now, this is an issue that is somewhat tailor made in one way for David Eby. He's come out on it before when the memorandum of understanding was signed. Uh, being rather upset that this was decided between Canada and the government of Alberta, and that the government of BC wasn't included at this point. An argument that the Conservatives will make, and in certain cases you can see how it is made here, is that, there's an issue with Alberta about whether or not a pipeline could even be possible. What are the terms for one to be possible? Those need to be negotiated, those minimum terms. Once those minimum terms are negotiated, then we can bring you in, see how we can make this happen. Um, it makes sense in one way. It's one way to proceed. Yes, but another equally valid way to proceed would be to include all the parties affected at this point. So, had they included BC and said, you know what? Okay, you know, what are the conditions for both? Getting one approved, for one to be possible on the part of Alberta, and then on the part of British Columbia approved, so that, if it is possible, it can actually be built and put into operation, like with as few speed bumps along the way as possible. Uh, Takes a little more time to get there when you involve more parties, but that was another way of proceeding. There would have been a whole other broader way of proceeding, just grabbing all the premiers together and saying, "Listen, we need to do this, get there." But then that creates, when you have 13 voices, and then one Canada, yeah, but what about my thing? But what about my thing? And creates lots of reasons, in theory, to oppose something. So going the narrow towards the larger route, okay, what are the things that we specifically need to resolve Alberta so that this can even potentially be a glimmer in someone's eye? Okay, now BC, in order for it to be operational, now rest of Canada, that we've got that. How does this affect all of you? And what do we have to change for all of you to be feeling like you're being treated fairly now that we've done this? This can be viewed as um, having either In this particular case, having one province trying to take the nation hostage, and that's because of just the very hostile manner in which Danielle Smith particularly does politics, and the that whole thing for some reason with Alberta politics, it always has to be so apocalyptically oppositional to Ottawa, right? Unnecessarily so. Uh, that whole culture there. Um, but from another perspective, it could just as well apply. For example, if, as in this case, from the prime minister's perspective, you could say it's, I want to become an energy superpower. The energy is under the ground in Alberta. So, hello, Alberta. I have an objective. Like this. Uh, what do we need to do to make sure that I, as prime minister, reach my objective? Which in that case doesn't become a situation of a province holding a nation hostage. That's a province, making a lot of noise, whatnot, but a nation deciding that it is taking a certain path, realizing that there's an annoyance that has to be dealt with, and okay, what's it going to take to get you out of my way? Right? And in the case where it isn't an annoyance, it would be, well, here's a great opportunity. This opportunity happens to be in this one particular place. So, we have to decide something over here. And yes, there's some people that are going to scream that you're getting all the attention at the moment, but hey, this is where the money is. Right? So, uh, you can get to a good destination with either of these processes. But if we are speaking time, efficiency, getting stuff done as fast as possible, as approved as fast as possible, um, one is going to pick the path of what they hope is the least resistance. And negotiating one on one, getting one building block set, going to the other person, building block second. And if you have to change things afterwards to make people happy, fine, that's it. That's going to be cost of business. At least this thing gets done and we'll deal with that stuff later. Um, right? Knowing that not everybody's going to be happy at the end of the day. But you got the big project going, and at least you have something to point to, and you can say, "Hey, that's going on." Everybody can go, "Ah," and while people are screaming over there, then maybe everybody else is paying attention to the "ah" thing that happened and not the screaming. You hope. That's the plan. Not all plans survive first contact. Um, but um, David Eby has uh, been given opportunities as a result of this to don the coat of righteous, either anger or indignation or whatever, uh, in order to make a stand up in his province. Now, um, he has some legitimate reasons in the sense that there are many projects that are approved and ready to go, or very near to be ready to go, that are contingent on the route of that pipeline not passing through to a terminal at certain points on the West Coast. The memorandum of understanding originally was written very cleverly to say that it was a pipeline to the West Coast and not to any particular place. Danielle Smith has been pushing very hard for it to be going through northern BC because it seemed, according to her, it reduces travel time to get to markets. However, she also seems to have been indicating a few times that she would be open to other routes. For the longest time, it seems that she was thinking about only one or two. In latest interviews, we've seen that she has five routes under consideration, and not all of them are southern routes. From the BC side, there's a lot of people that are trying to portray David Eby as being uh, extremely opposed to the project in any terms. That is not necessarily the case. He has proposed a path that goes along the TMX path that already exists. That seems to be an option that the government of Alberta does not want to entertain. I do not know if it is now one of the five that they are indeed entertaining. It would appear that at some point, Prime Minister Carney's um, uh, role in this, in trying to smooth things, trying to be the dad that smooths things over uh, for the fighting kids or between the fighting kids, is to get Danielle Smith to agree that the path of least resistance for that project is going to be going along the same path that already does exist. Um, and Danielle Smith uh, may have the opportunity to be increasingly convinced that the Prime Minister and Premier Eby are correct, given what's going on with the petition and how Indigenous leaders kind of stop that cold. Right? She can go in front of the cameras and perform all she wants. Um, there comes a point where when the courts say no, if you're going to keep on defying, you are lining yourself up to be arrested or charged yourself, right? There's only so much defiance of the courts one can do. And again, you can't invoke the notwithstanding clause on duty to consult. You just can't. So at some point, she is going to have to sit across the table with somebody. um, so everything seems to indicate that if people want to get this done and get this done quickly, it's going to follow the path that TMX is already going on. And there will be some work at the Port of Vancouver to make it such that it could accept bigger ships. And, that's the way it will go down. Anything else will add a delay to it. Um, However, there are two realities here for maybe that are at play that are should be viewed in context here. The first one uh, is once again we could look at some polling. It would seem here that in the vote projection, very recently, very recently, things got very close uh, in um, in March, around March 14th. It was showing both the NDP and the Conservative Party British Columbia at 41%. And it's been a pretty narrow race, right? All for the last year. But here showing that the Conservative Party British Columbia has overtaken the NDP 43 to 39. Now, um, there is a progressive Conservative Party British Columbia leadership race going on right now, and a lot of attention is being brought to the party. So some of that rise can have to do with that. Once they choose the leader, of course, probably maybe be a honeymoon period or something like that, and then things will have a time to revert back to a mean at one point once people have the chance to see them in action. So you will notice here that the BC Greens have been very slowly uh, increasing over the course of the year from 8% to 11% here. Again, when things are that close, even a loss of 2% to a third party here can have a very big impacts up here. So David Eby is facing a current situation where it is indicated, the polls are indicating that he is lower on vote projection, also indicating, oh, this is the part that I should definitely show you here, because just that little difference in the switch of polls when it comes to seat count is showing the Progressive Conservative Party now in majority territory with 53 seats and the NDP dropping from 38 from a high of 57 just February 18th. On February 18th. So David Eby is in a bit of a free fall right now. And the Progressive Conservative Party of British Columbia is in a bit of a surge from 34 to 53 seats. And that's all since mid-March. Um, so David Eby, about 6 days ago, had gone to the press, and I think, and made a comment that was a comment that showed where he was going to be taking, um, and where what he was going to build on here with regard to this. Just I don't know where I had it lined up. This is really weird. Before I started the show, things disappear on me. It's kind of weird. Maybe it's on Mr. Robertson's. Yes. No, that's not it either. Okay. Very weird. Oh, I know what I did. Silly me. Okay. Pardon me, kids and cubs. I yeah, I I had a brain fart. I had a brain fart. There we go. So this is a courtesy of Global News. This was about 6 days ago. Um, I think it is before the announcement of the that we talked about yesterday of what things had concluded with between the Premier of Alberta and the Premier of the Prime Minister. However, a lot of news about what was probably going to be in there was already um, in the public sphere. So, David Eby did have something that he was pretty sure he could be reacting to. There wasn't that many surprises once the deal was officially announced. So this is what he said at that point that caught the attention of Canadians and the media and let us know what he was going to be building on here.
I'm following along in the newspapers with everyone else in terms of the discussions between Premier Smith and Prime Minister Carney. This morning, I understand that there were negotiations about the national carbon price with Alberta, and that there may have been a decision made to move forward with a price of $130 a ton. This is a big deal for British Columbia and the rest of Canada, because in the rest of Canada, we have a nationally mandated carbon price of $170. And it seems as though there's a possibility that this policy is being adjusted for a single province. I'm curious about what the federal government's perspective is, if this is in fact what the plan is. We are in direct competition with Alberta on certain projects. We will not be in a competitive position if Alberta has a special federal carbon price that the rest of us don't have access to in the rest of Canada. And so certainly I'm curious about what is being agreed to and what is being discussed. But I also understand no formal announcements have been made, and we look forward to more details from the federal government. In terms of our role with the federal government and where we are here today in the skilled trades announcement, I've been reaching out to the Prime Minister and conversations about how we can ensure that BC's projects, which are real projects, which have proponents, which are in final investment decision, get the same amount of attention as the proposed Alberta pipeline project that still has no route and no proponent. I believe that we can get there, but we do need to make sure that there's a level playing field for everybody in Canada, and it's not just one province that gets special and treatment that results in a competitive advantage for them and a disadvantage for the rest of Canada.
All right, so there is a lot going on there in that statement from David Eby, um, right? You have there's lots there. You can have the claim that Ottawa is setting national policy by negotiating with just one province. Ottawa may be potentially giving an advantage to one province over another. Again, as a federal government, you can turn around and say, "Yeah, we did that. We made it 1:30 in Alberta because we need to become an energy superpower because this is going on. Yes, this will create a temporary competitive advantage for them, but this has the potential to bring in X billion of dollars extra a year into the coffers and help us reorient and pivot away at a time, and time is of the essence. So, yes, it's going to be harder, but that is a choice that we have made, and we are going to stand by it, right? That is an option. There's a route. Um, and then, of course, that gift wraps, an issue to every single provincial premier who loves to, campaign against Ottawa. And said, "Oh my God, we're just being treated so unfairly. Our ambitions are being crushed. If everything that's going wrong is the fact of that, that Alberta's got that advantage and is killing us all." You can see where this goes, right? True, not true. It sounds good. You run with it, right? And it's a perfect shield to hide behind, to deflect away from all of your own incompetence, should that be something that is happening to you as a premier. Um, and this also is the thing that has, of course, people that are more on the environmental side, who I talked about yesterday, who, yes, even though the fact that we're in an existential moment with regard to the United States and the economy, the existential moment that is Mother Nature is still way more important and superior. And is, even though the effects we're going to be feeling gradually over time, we are feeling them now. And really, you're not convinced yet? Uh, like, that group sees this and says, okay, we had 170 for all across Canada, and now with this one thing, it's now just been lowered to 130 for all across Canada, not just Alberta. Betrayal, right? There's a lot going on here. But what's going on here as well, and there were additional comments with that, is basically David Eby saying, hey, and you'll notice the shade going on there that David Eby always throws in there. Like, we have a lot of projects that are ready to go. They are real projects with proponents and routes. So, given we got all of that going on, hey, why aren't we getting the same attention Alberta is getting? Given they still have a concept of a pipeline, and we got some real stuff about some of that love and that special exception over here. Now, of course, again, sounds good until we do remember that I believe, if I'm not mistaken, of all those major projects, BC has the greatest number of them on the list. So there's two articles here. One is from the Canadian Press, as it appears in Nanaimo News now, and it says BC Premier Eby says Canada won't work if Ottawa favors separatist premiers, and this is now after the announcement here. Canada cannot work if separatist premiers get all of the attention of the federal government, BC Premier David Eby said on Tuesday. He said that's the message that he's going to relay to Prime Minister Mark Carney when they meet today, after Carney met with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith last week to announce pipeline promises to the West Coast and low and carbon tax for Alberta. And I saw some of the political panel shows again. It's like, again, it's like the parent, Alberta was crying. So, okay, what do you know? So, and gave her a little bottle and made sure baby Danielle was fed and changed the nappy. And but what's that? Oh, okay, now Premier Eby. Okay, what do you want? So and this will probably provoke a cry somewhere else after a while, and and it will be that. That's what the prime minister's looks like. The job that he's taken on for himself, that he literally is going to be dad, is making sure that all the kids are not constantly crying, while making sure everybody does get in the car so we can get to where we need on time, and that he doesn't have to stop the car and make them stop crying along the way. Quote, the reality is that there is a very real and present threat of a referendum on separatism in Alberta enabled by decisions made by the Albertan government, Eby said when asked how much of his comment about separatist premiers was aimed at Smith. I believe that that is part of why we are seeing the federal government engage differently with Alberta than other premiers across the country. Eby made the statement at an unrelated news conference outside the legislature in Victoria as he prepares for his meeting with the Prime Minister in Vancouver. Carney and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith signed an agreement last week that could start the construction of a new pipeline to BC's coast as early as next year and announced lower carbon pricing for the province of $130 per ton by 2040. Friday's announcement by Carney and Smith did not include details about a route, and it is not clear yet whether the announced carbon price will also apply to other provinces. They also did not include details about meeting their duty to consult. And that should be added in that article there. Eby said he did not understand how Ottawa's carbon agreement with Alberta is going to be implemented across Canada because national policies need to be negotiated with all premiers, not just one. Quote, the Prime Minister needs to answer for why he made that decision, Eby said. It's not one I agree with. Eby said projects being advanced in BC are pro-Canadian, yet they are being left out of the discussion. Quote, bluntly, we cannot have bad behavior decide who gets engaged with by the federal government, Eby said. We need to stand up for Canada and we need to make sure we are supporting every province and territory with equal respect, and that is what will provide a unified country. Eby used Tuesday's news conference to tout various provincial projects in need of federal support. We have $88 billion in projects, 34 different major projects, 40% of projects in the major projects office, real projects with proponents and routes and ready to go. And see, that's where David Eby, if you're paying attention to his argument, it's like, we need just as much attention as Alberta. We have 40% of projects in the major projects office. Yeah, which means they're getting the attention. But polling numbers mean that you got to fight Ottawa. So this is his platform. British Columbia, he added, just needs to see the same level of support that Alberta has seen from Carney. We need to do it together, and we need to have at least as much enthusiasm from the federal government for BC projects as they have shown for Alberta projects or for Alberta Project. Because that's the other thing that Danielle Smith did when Danielle Smith keeps on being asked, well, isn't there anything else, if this pipeline isn't approved, that you can do in Alberta to help change, diversify, bolster the economy? The answer is basically no. She's eliminated all other possibilities, and for good measure to prove it, she kneecapped the entire renewable sector. So she created a situation where it had to be oil or nothing. She literally manufactured that. So there's no Alberta projects. There's one Alberta project. That's it. The entirety of their contribution to the nation on how it is that we can better diversify and meet the challenges, approve us a pipeline to the West Coast. Anything else? No, just that. Really, anything at all? No. Nothing more creative, really. If you try using your imagination, no, just the pipeline. And if you don't, then that means Canada doesn't work. I mean, it's just silly on its face. But that's the situation the Prime Minister was dealing with, and the Prime Minister wants to remove the roadblocks as fast as possible. So basically, what's it going to take to shut you up mode? Really. A spokesperson from the Prime Minister's office said in an emailed statement late Tuesday that it will work with all provinces and territories on getting big things built to benefit British Columbians and all Canadians. The statement said 1/3 of projects and transformative strategies referred to the major projects office are in BC. Trevor Halford, interim leader for the Conservative Party of British Columbia, said Eby's comments were meant to improve his poll numbers. So, at the end of the day, he should be learning to be more cooperative and less obstructionist, Halford told reporters in the legislature. Unfortunately, there's a disconnect in the relationship between the Prime Minister and the Premier of BC, and obviously the Premier is going to try and weaponize that like he did today, Halford said on Tuesday. In the legislature on Tuesday, the BC Conservatives accused Eby of opposing the proposed pipeline to the detriment of British Columbia, and that's the trick, you see. Now, Trevor Halford is doing what I'm doing here, calling out the fact that, oh, well, I see your poll numbers there. And I see, okay, you're going to take it to the Prime Minister and to do that. But where the lie comes in is that, unfortunately, there's a disconnect in the relationship between the Prime Minister and the Premier of BC. There's no evidence of that. There's no evidence of the fact that the Prime Minister is giving this much attention to Alberta. Is it really to Alberta, or is it to the fact that he wants a pipeline to the West Coast? Because that is a core element of his own strategy. Right? It's the frame you put on it. Is the Prime Minister given all this attention to Alberta, or is the Prime Minister singularly focused on his objective to make Canada a superpower by increasing conventional and renewable energy, and for the conventional part, as much as possible, directing it to the west coast or the north coast if we're talking about Churchill Falls. The east coast would be nice, but we have the Quebec issue in terms of a bitumen pipeline passing there. A gas project probably would be approved by the province of Quebec. Not sure about bitumen. Wait, so and of course, we have the Darlington nuclear stuff and the Cameco stuff with uranium. But particularly if we're talking about the fossil fuel ones, we want it going either north to Churchill or west, right? Yes, if there's an opportunity after we diversify as much as we can to sell more to the United States, fine. But that's not our priority right now, right? Unless we just need the jobs to keep the industry going. But it's not particular our priority. Our priority is not to send more of what we have that is precious and valuable to a country that doesn't appreciate it and is not even paying full price for it anyway. And getting us nothing in return as thanks for that little bonus. And whatever that they don't use, that they take from us, they sell and they pick up the profit from it. Right? So that's, again, it could just be in this particular case that Danielle Smith's priorities of getting a pipeline being if she actually is not a separatist and just an oil lobbyist masquerading as a politician who is using the separatists to try to get what she wants for the oil lobby. Right? That's one version of Danielle Smith. The other version of Danielle Smith is that she actually is a separatist. But the wrench in that narrative is that the separatists don't want the pipeline, don't want this MOU. And Danielle Smith seems to be laying her political future on it. So, actual separatist or just oil lobbyists very willing to play with fire in order to get her pipeline. When she does, she's going to dump the separatists faster than a fascist can say Mussolini. We don't know yet how this is going to play out. But we have Premier Eby here while denouncing squeaky wheel politics. You can't say, give me what I want, or else I'm going to break up the country and then reward that bad behavior and give that province all your attention and change rules just for them and make things harder for us. You can't give all their attention. What about our things? We want some attention too. Right now, not sure how we feel about that pipeline. That pipeline that you want so badly, that you're willing to change the rules for Alberta. There's things that we want badly. Now we're not happy with Ottawa. Oh, what's that? Do you see the passing of the baton? Danielle Smith, it looks like she's gonna get her. Comes David Eby and just snatches the squeaky wheel politics baton right from her while denouncing squeaky wheel politics, engaging in the squeaky wheel politics that he believes will lead to the projects that he has there getting approved. Now, of course, there appears to be very little doubt that it will be approved. That's the difference between the pipeline thing. The mythology in Alberta is like, there will never be another pipeline so long as Ottawa exists. Type thing. Even though the first one they got in 80 years, pipeline to Tidewater, came while Ottawa existed and Liberals were in power. But it doesn't matter. It's about the mythology. You got to maintain the mythology at all times, right? It's literally the same playbook, except more from the political left. Here, It says, you're giving the separatists all they want. You're giving a province that moans the most, whatever they want. You're changing all these rules and creating unfair advantages. I mean, it's just, this is so not fair. I mean, we have some real stuff that's going to go. All we want is the same attention you've given to them. Oh my God. And now, well, David Eby has his meeting with the prime minister. You will also note that in that whole thing, when David Eby was talking, so, we're not saying no, right? I think we can get there. Of course, you think you're going to get there. If there is a pipeline built, it is additional economic activity. If it gets to a port, that's not going to send you to court for the next 6 or 7 years. That you can start exporting. It's extra economic activity. If you have to dredge that port a little extra to bring in bigger ships, that's extra economic activity. If you have bigger ships coming in, maybe that's bigger fees. This is all, um, you know, not necessarily bad, especially if you get that in addition to all of those other projects that you have on the list. Not a bad day, not a bad couple days work for Premiere. Just saying. And then because they created that oppositional thing, it's like, well, I guess the narrative, the Prime Minister, Danielle Smith tried to get away with getting some temporary advantage, but I stood up to the prime minister and I said, no, you cannot do that. And not only did we get that, but our projects are going through and we got more projects than Alberta. Look at us. Ain't I a great premier? Vote for me. And, hopefully in the meantime, the BC Conservatives elect their new leader and ends up being as much of a disaster as everyone else in this movement by yelling about Indigenous stuff and anti-trans stuff. But they're trying to portray David Eby as being opposed to this pipeline. He's not opposed to the pipeline. There's a route. He's been saying it for months. Fuck. Go down this path, please. He's practically begging them to go down this path so that the other projects he's worked so hard on can materialize. He's not opposed to the pipeline. He's opposed to the process. And he's opposed to a pipeline that's going to go through a northern route, and particularly one that's going to instantly lead to litigation from Indigenous people. And potentially the cancellation of some of the projects that he's been working on for the longest time. But he's not opposed to it. There is no clip of him saying that. There is no way I will not approve. David Eby is even on the record as saying, hey, the last premier tried to do it and it went to court, and the court said that the federal government has authority. I accept that. He's just saying, but if this is going to happen anyway, please, for the love of everything that you guys hold dear, please, this way. Who says Canadian politics are boring, man? Oh, man. There's a press conference that happened just the other day, the so-called unrelated press conference, where a lot of the quotes that I read, David Eby said that, and people have bringing attention to it to show that how do you put it? David Eby, a difference in styles. Let's put it this way: between the way that Danielle Smith, very outwardly belligerent, right, always coming to the table first. With the initial frame being that Ottawa / Canada / Liberals / Trudeau are evil. They always want to try to hold us down. We absolutely need to do this in this like loud way. We got to fight all the time because Ottawa's always blah 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 type thing. Very aggressive, outwardly confrontational. Um, so, uh, and whether it works for her or that kind of stuff, that is definitely her shtick, her game. Um, David Eby is a little different, right? It's not outwardly confrontational, and a lot of again, the political panelists and pundits seem to be indicating like he's taking this tone and making this oppositional thing, you know, because he kind of has, not because he kind of has to, but it, let's put it, it's the strategy that is proving to work, particularly if we are thinking always about one's domestic audience first. You're looking like the fighter who's taken it to Ottawa to get the win, but that his heart is not particularly in it. Again, probably because he already knows what the ultimate result is going to be. Right? There probably will not be some type of double standard. If there is, there'll probably be some type of compensation for it. It's clear that the projects in BC are going to be supported. It is clear that the Prime Minister will do whatever he can to nudge the project along, if it is to go around a route that has the least resistance, because that's how you get things done quickly. David Eby kind of knows, really, that British Columbia is not going to get screwed on this. Again, unless Danielle Smith decides to throw a complete curveball and sabotage the project on herself. But if she wants it done, and assuming that she does want it done, then there's absolutely no way that BC is getting screwed on this. Because there are, at the end of the day, more votes in it for Mark Carney in British Columbia than there are in Alberta. And more seats. There's more seats to lose there. And right now, federally, Prime Minister and the party not doing so poorly in British Columbia specifically. If just trying to get this look here. Sorry. If an election were held today, the federal government, the Liberals would pick up 28 of the seats in British Columbia, with the 15 others going to other parties. That's pretty good for them. And again, if we're looking at, since we're talking about the polls and all that kind of stuff, let's just look at the federal number here so I can show you. Replace. There we go. I'm starting to get this, but there's still just too many things to click at in order to bring it to you. Come on, no, don't go there. That's not what I asked for. See, it shouldn't take this long to bring a screen up to show you. It used to be way quicker. If Lib doing well and still increasingly doing better here in British Columbia, despite everything drama that's trying to be created. So there's no way that the Prime Minister is going to deliberately try to do something to stop that momentum. So we know that these projects are probably going to be approved unless there's something like terrible about one of them. And I doubt very much that that's the case, because Mr. Eby does not strike us as the type of premier who tends to go about this portion of his work in a sloppy manner. This is the oppositional shtick is somewhat performative, right? But it's being done because that is what seems to work. Now, but if you look here at this press conference, it's the time it takes him to get to that point here that kind of lets people know. And of course, the intensity. Danielle Smith is just on a whole other level of intensity, of rage and resentment when she speaks that just Mr. David Eby doesn't have. I don't know if he has the capacity for it, to be totally honest. He just seems to be such a nice guy.
To unmute yourself when called upon. We're going to start with Dee DeRosa from CBC.
Premier, you're expected to meet with the Prime Minister tomorrow. Do you intend to tell him that he shouldn't be rewarding bad behavior with this proposed pipeline, and he shouldn't be rewarding separatism as your message on Friday?
Yeah, you know, the message I have for the Prime Minister is a pretty straightforward one. British Columbia backs Canada, and we need Ottawa to back British Columbia. We have $88 billion in projects, 34 different major projects, 40% of the projects of the Major Projects Office, real projects with proponents and routes and ready to go. And we have the British Columbians who are getting trained to be able to take the jobs these projects create through $250 million in new funding for training, so that this puts more money in British Columbians' pockets by creating jobs and opportunity. It puts more money in Canadians' pockets across the country by lifting the national GDP. We just need to see that same level of support that Alberta has seen from the Prime Minister right here in British Columbia.
The day before the announcement, you were standing alongside the federal energy minister with an announcement about LNG. Do you see that as a potential quid pro quo? Like, if we placate BC on LNG, they will be more likely to support the pipeline. And also, it seems like you're not talking about legal challenges anymore. Are you leaving it up to environmental groups and First Nations to mount that challenge?
No, I mean, not at all. Look, my message isn't complicated. Like, we have these huge companies. They want to build a lot of stuff in British Columbia, things that the world needs. They want to expand our port capacity. They want to create jobs for British Columbians. They want to lift the national economy. And they're here and they're ready to go. And we need a strong federal partner to work with us to deliver these projects. So that's the very straightforward message. I'm not playing five-dimensional chess here. This is just the reality of the incredible good fortune that British Columbia has to have these opportunities. And I understand the Premier of Alberta is going to advocate for the Premier of Alberta's stuff. And the Premier of British Columbia is going to advocate for British Columbia's stuff, which has the added benefit of being projects that are going to deliver for all Canadians. And that's something we're really proud of here. And that's something we want to see reflected in an equal level of federal enthusiasm for British Columbia.
Ben O'Hara-Byrne, Global News.
Thanks, Premier. Following up on that, is there not a world where you and Alberta mutually benefiting from someone? And how would you communicate that to the government of Alberta? Because for the time being, you've sounded negative about all this. And if I'm the Premier of Alberta, I'm saying, well, you're the gatekeeper.
It's probably a great question, but I just can't quite hear you because the speakers are pointed the wrong way. And
is there a place where you could find mutual ground with the government of Alberta on this issue? Because clearly they don't want you gatekeeping their access to Tidewater. Is there a way you could find a way around this?
I mean, I guess, the position I find myself in is one where I'm advocating for BC projects. Because the Premier of Alberta is advocating for Albertan projects, and I understand why she's doing that. But she's not sitting at the table going, oh, make sure that you're also delivering on these big BC projects that have proponents and routes and permits and they're reaching final investment decision. That's not her job. That's my job. And I'll make sure that that's the message that I'm delivering to the Prime Minister. I will not be using my time with the Prime Minister to advocate for Alberta's projects because they are getting a lot of time with the Prime Minister right now.
I hope you can hear me here.
Shade. That was shade.
On the BC Sports Hall of Fame, it seems like FIFA's decided to give them the boot.
So there you go. Those first four questions, took them all to get there. But he got there. But that's his clearly attempting to be much more diplomatic than the Premier of Alberta has ever been. There we go. Is this the one here? Vaughn Palmer of the Vancouver Sun has an opinion piece here that kind of puts some context here with it. It says Premier David Eby has often boasted about BC's success in securing spots in the federal government's lists of major projects to be fast-tracked in the national interest. The LNG Canada expansion project in Kitimat and the Red Chris copper and gold mine in northwestern BC were among the first 5 projects announced by Prime Minister Mark Carney last September. I'm glad to see that 40% of the federal government's nation-building projects are located in BC, Eby said at the time. If the federal government wants private sector projects that deliver prosperity for all Canadians, look west to British Columbia. Carney included 2 more BC projects, the Xilisms LNG and North Coast Transmission Line, in the next 6 announced in November. Underscoring the BC connection, he made the announcement in Terrace. Eby could not have been more happy. Quote, with today's announcement, we see that half of the projects across the country that the Prime Minister has identified as major projects are BC projects, he said. BC is going to be the economic engine of this new economy that we are building, and it is great to see some recognition from Ottawa that this is going to be the case. By the end of 2025, BC had 4 projects on the list. Ontario and Quebec had 2 each. Saskatchewan, New Brunswick, and the North 1 apiece, and the remaining provinces none. Just last week, Ottawa offered further reassurances to Eby regarding BC's central importance in developing major projects. Federal Energy Minister Tim Hutchison shared a platform with Premier Eby in Vancouver when they touted the prospects for approval of Phase 2 of the LNG Canada plant in Kitimat. Both governments announced an agreement to do whatever it takes to secure a final investment decision from Shell and its partners in LNG Canada before the end of the year. And I might add here as well, there was the Sunshine Project with Enbridge that was also announced. Quote, moving toward final investment decision is a major vote of confidence in the project, said Eby. We think that's worth celebrating. When you see countries, Japan, Korea, Malaysia, Shell, operating all over the world, and China, all saying we can put our money anywhere and we want to put it in this country, this is a huge show of support, agreed Hutchison. Yet, for all of those federal votes of confidence in BC, Eby expressed only contempt Friday when Prime Minister Carney and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith announced a pipeline deal. Quote, as a country, it's time to stop rewarding bad behavior, Eby fumed. It cannot be the case that the projects that get prioritized in Canada are those where a premier threatens to leave the country. Set aside that BC already had 4 projects on the priority list while this was Alberta's first placement, it wasn't good enough for Eby. Quote, here in BC, we have what the rest of the world is looking for. Critical minerals, natural resources, and port access. We have shovel-ready projects with real proponents and investments that will provide good paying jobs and funding for public services. The federal government must work as closely with us on these projects as they work with the government of Alberta on Premier Smith's proposed pipeline, a project that has yet to identify a proponent or route. Next week, I'll be meeting with the Prime Minister to bring him a list of projects we can work on for the benefit of all Canadians. Canada is our strength, declared Eby, cloaking himself in a mantle of righteousness. We love this country. And the Alberta Premier? Well, draw your own conclusions. The standoff spilled into question period in the legislature on Tuesday, with the opposition challenging the premier over his fruitless opposition to the pipeline. Quote, we have 40% of the projects in the major province's office federally are BC projects, Eby fired back. Every time the opposition talks about BC and our economy, they run it down. Today, we hear them stand up on the project they care most about, Alberta's project. They fight for Alberta. When will they fight for BC? Ooh, that's a smooth move, Mr. Eby, actually. Opposition leader Trevor Halford pointed out that the New Democrats squandered millions of dollars on failed court actions against the TMX pipeline. They mainly succeeded in proving that the province did not have even one tool in the toolbox to block construction of a federal government-approved interprovincial pipeline. Why not take a different tack this time? Why not accept the inevitable and work behind the scenes to secure benefits for BC and or influence the choice of a southern over a northern route for the pipeline? That's what Eby actually is doing. That's what Eby is actually doing. But this article or opinion piece is focusing on the performative aspect of it and disassociating it, is claiming that the performative aspect of it is not with a view to adopt this particular strategy. But Eby was in full indignation mode when he spoke to reporters following question period. We need to have at least as much enthusiasm for the federal government for BC projects as for Alberta projects, said the Premier. We need to see the same level of support that Alberta has seen. So to recap, Ottawa so far is backing 4 major projects in BC and only 1 in Alberta. When Eby sits down with the Prime Minister later next week, Carney might want to start the conversation with the math lesson. So that's where you know that it's a conservative column because they get the premises right and then screw up the conclusion. Framing here is that David Eby doesn't know how to do math. Being appropriately, his game is being appropriately called out. But the writer of this column does not see clearly, or is choosing not to see, that the performative aspect is the stuff that appears to work when you're playing the game of politics, but the entire goal of it, indeed, is to nudge the project around the southern route while ensuring that there are wins for British Columbia with the projects that it has, and maybe using, if there's going to be any leverage, using it to get even more of their projects included in the next round of announcements, or just funded in the manner in which the Sunshine uh, pipeline project, LNG pipeline project, was announced. Not as a major project, but still a project, and one that's worthy of a little help and a boost. So, just thought it was interesting to watch David Eby complain about squeaky wheel politics while then engaging in squeaky wheel politics because they work. So I have a feeling that once we hear the results of this meeting that will be happening between the Prime Minister and Premier Eby, I believe that is happening early in the afternoon, uh, Pacific time, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see if I can find something on the list of things going on. Nope, can't see it here. Usually they include a time, but I do not see it. Maybe it'll be on the Prime Minister's availability today. Media advisories. Prime Minister will deliver remarks and participate in featured conversation with the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade at 8:18 a.m. 9:30 a.m. I am going all times local. So yeah, the Prime Minister will meet with the Premier of British Columbia. So around 12:30 our time here. So early in the afternoon, we'll probably be having some both of them coming to the microphones together, stating something, or each having their own separate conference, one or the other, and then telling us what the outcome of this meeting is. And I have a feeling that we're going to hear some things like, I made the case, and we're talking about things, but I'm very encouraged. Maybe there'll be a minor announcement of some kind, stating that something is some minor announcement of some funding for certain things from the Canadian Investment Bank or something of the sort, to show that Canada is serious and that things are being moved along, is what I would expect after this. But hey, this is why we watch how the game unfolds, isn't it? Man. Let's see. Other news, because there's been little things that have been happening, going on. One of the bits of news is that the United States, once again, seems to be wanting to attempt to provoke us, or is waving bait in our face and hoping that we are going to take a bite. Now, one of the things that happened, well, let's just let's go with this one. The bait that they put in front of our face was one that has to do trying to, how would you put it, make the Prime Minister somehow look weak on defense. And oh, wow. Okay. Well, there's a response. I didn't see that one coming. Okay. We have some breaking news to bring to you in the context of the story. So it would appear that the United States, this is according to the Canadian press, made a decision that it was going to abruptly pause a long-standing bilateral defense board and put its future under review. It's called the Permanent Joint Board on Defense, which hasn't met since 2024. It was established in the 1940s as an advisory board for U.S.-Canada bilateral defense cooperation. Now, again, it hasn't met since 2024, so it lets you know just what a priority this thing has been for the Trump administration. Just saying. Prime Minister Mark Carney showed no signs Tuesday of flinching over that decision. Quote, "It has a long heritage, but I wouldn't overplay the importance of this," Carney told a news conference in Quebec when asked about the development. "We have many aspects of very close defense cooperation with the United States." On Monday, U.S. Undersecretary of War Elbridge Colby announced that the Pentagon is, quote, "pausing participation on the bilateral board," and the reasons given, of course, are hilarious. But quote, "Only by investing in our own defense capabilities will Americans and Canadians be safe, secure, and prosperous." Colby wrote. Unfortunately, Canada has failed to make credible progress on its defense commitments. It's fentanyl at the border all over again. Now, when Mr. Colby says only by investing in our own defense capabilities will Americans and Canadians be safe, I'm not sure he means investing R for him means American and Canadian or just American. But uh, unfortunately, Canada has failed to make credible progress on its defense commitments. We've just gone from a nation under the previous government that wasn't intending to meet even the 2% target until like a few years from now, having met it. In fact, it seems that we're hitting 2.1 actually this year. We just did the over the horizon thing. We are looking at fighter planes. We are looking at subs. We are doing all this thing because remember, we've agreed to the 5 as well. And of that 5, 1.5% is infrastructure type related things, which with the projects that we have on the books and planned, we're pretty much already there on that one. As we're approving graphite mines and other things of the like that will participate. But yes, we have failed to make credible progress on our defense commitments. Said as the United States is literally bankrupting itself, financially waging a needless war on Iran. The number of missiles it has that could have been used to ensure our shared defenses that they just blew on Iran. The billions upon billions of dollars that they just blew on Iran. But we have failed to make credible progress on our defense commitments. While suspension does not affect joint military operations, it does deal a symbolic blow at a time when Canada and the U.S. are locked in a trade dispute and bilateral tensions remain elevated. I do not believe it deals a significant blow. It's a provocation. It's a provocation. It's handing the Conservatives an issue to say, "Oh my God, Mark Carney is weak on defense. Look at that. The United States doesn't trust us anymore. We need to get rid of the government." It's interference. Colby's posts implicitly lay some blame for the U.S. move on Prime Minister Mark Carney's frequent statements about making alliances with countries other than the United States in the wake of the United States President Donald Trump's trade war and his calls for making Canada the 51st state. Yes, you have nothing we need, but don't you dare go make alliances with anybody else either. Yes, because that's really going to work out for us. Yes, we are just going to obey in advance. You don't want us. Right, you've left the marital bed and marital home, but boy, don't you ever dare think of shaving your legs and going to that singles bar. I don't want you, but don't you go start thinking that you're worthy of someone. Gee, tell me that doesn't sound like Donald Trump, eh? Quote, "We can no longer avoid the gaps between rhetoric and reality. Real powers must sustain our rhetoric with shared defense and security responsibilities," Colby wrote in a post linked to a transcript of Carney's headline-grabbing speech at this year's World Economic Forum in Davos. It seems that somebody's fifis are still hurt. Again, laughing in Canadian. Yeah, and as soon as you stop entering into unnecessary wars and threatening to invade Greenland, maybe We'll take what you have to say about shared defense and security responsibilities seriously. Sorry, we didn't hear you over our chuckling. The Prime Minister said Tuesday there's a lot of cooperation between Canada and the United States, and that will continue. But Ottawa will also reach out to other allies to diversify defense cooperation. So, you know, it's like, "Ah, you're talking about making these alliances. You shouldn't be doing that, Prime Minister. Our relationship will continue, but we're also going to keep on doing what we're doing." That's basically the flipping of the bird there as a response. Carney said Canada will step up in critical areas such as support for Ukraine's defense against Russia, while Ukraine does not fall directly under NATO's defense responsibilities. Carney said aiding its defense is, quote, consistent with our values and those of a vast number of our partners. Ukraine is going to triumph, and we're going to be on the right side of history for that, he said. The Prime Minister also vowed Tuesday to continue increasing defense spending and pointed to projects such as the NORAD upgrades that will cost tens of billions of dollars. Ottawa and NATO announced this spring that estimates suggested Canada met its alliance defending target of 2% of GDP for the first time over the past year. Carney said that figure is currently tracking at 2.1%. In a Toronto Star editorial on Monday, the former parliamentary budget officer Kevin Page criticized Ottawa for failing to publicly reconcile the cost of elevated defense spending with the need for new revenue. Page wrote, "It is, quote, indefensible that the federal government has not yet produced a clear financial plan for achieving the newer NATO defense spending target of 3.5% of GDP by 2035. When the Canadian press asked about that criticism, Carney replied that it would be premature to project that far out at this point. There's a couple of reasons why we don't immediately specify that, he said. The core reason is we want to spend the money well. The Prime Minister said modern warfare is undergoing rapid changes through technological advances in drone technology and artificial intelligence, as seen throughout the war in Ukraine. Quote, if we had sat down even in June of last year and mapped out how the armed forces would have thought how they would have spent 1.5% of GDP on defense, it would have looked a lot like how they would have answered that question 5 years ago, Carney said. We're not going to do that. The Prime Minister also pointed out that the NATO spending targets are up for review in 30. So there you go. Literally provocation here. There's nothing about what's being stated that is tethered to reality. However, the United States, once again, by unilaterally pulling out of this board and making a silly claim like this, all it is doing is sending to Canada yet another signal that it is clearly in our interest to go with the Gripen. And also, if the United States thought that we were going to have a similar arrangement as we do with NORAD when it comes for patrolling the Northern Passage, they might be in for a surprise. We may not just be that into it anymore. Especially soon as we're going to have a system of low orbit satellites soon. And we are particularly good at sensors. We may not. Again, as was the case with the Golden Dome type thing. We may not be all that into the first telephone call about what's going to happen should something be crossing Canadian airspace, be going to Washington anymore. We might want the first phone call coming here, and then we call Washington and let them know that what we are going to do. Or call them and say, what are we going to do about this? And not get the call, hey, so this is what we're going to do about this. Also, with regard to that little Golden Dome thing, it would appear that there's a report that came out from the Congressional Budget Office that indicates that the initially proposed Golden Dome, which was supposed to be $125 billion, is actually going to come out to more than $1.2 trillion. And that's before they do things like buy the land that would be needed to do that, and a whole bunch of other things. And that once fully implemented, it would require a constellation of about 7,800 satellites, all functioning simultaneously, and that at a full capacity would be able to intercept about 10 interballistic missiles sent at one time, thus making the system extremely easy to overload because you can launch more than 10 ICBMs at a time from a single ship. Good thing we didn't put that $11 billion in, did we? $1.2 trillion for a piece of crap that's already obsolete and can before it's even started to be built and can be easily overwhelmed. That's the Golden Dome. And that's the nation that's looking at us and going tisk about our defense spending. I'm sorry. It's just not serious. It's just simply not serious. Oh my God. Then, uh, so that's one way of trying to influence on our things, trying to make the prime minister look weak on military and defense. But then, and this one is somewhat laughable. But this one, the next one is not laughable at all. Now, remember a couple of weeks ago when in Ottawa there was that Canada Strong and Free conference at which Danielle Smith came to speak while she was going to have that meeting with the prime minister, where she said, "Oh my God, I think we're going to have a meeting of the minds coming soon." And Pierre Poilievre spoke and delivered that speech that Adam Zivo from the National Post, who's supposed to be a friendly publication, called underwhelming, and may be the first signal that it is now over, even from within for Pierre Poilievre. And there was supposed to be a special guest there coming to address the crowd, and that special guest somehow, uh, for some reason that was not announced, decided that he was not going to show up, canceled his appearance, and uh, just nobody knew why. All of a sudden, gentleman decided he was either busy, had too many things to do. I'm not sure. But this guy here. Oh, yes, yes, yes. You recognize this guy? Uh, Ambassador Fuckface or Doucheface? Yeah. It would appear that there is a connection between him and the Alberta Separatist group. Or, well, not so much the Separatist group, but the voter ID app that they used. This, according to Press Progress. Luc Lebrun, the editor. Alberta Separatist Group's controversial voter ID app has links to U.S. Ambassador, MAGA influencers, and wealthy Michigan Republicans. U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra says he was not aware. Mm-hmm. Sure, girl. American-made app he previously promoted was used to help Alberta Separatist Group. Donald Trump's top envoy to Canada says he was unaware a voter identification app that he previously endorsed and promoted was used by an Alberta separatist group at the center of a major Canadian political scandal. That would be so much easier to believe had proponents of that separatist group not bragged about taking trips to the United States and talking to people and even securing some type of line of credit. But they did. So nobody believes you, Ambassador. U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra, who is also personally acquainted with both the app's founder and the founder's wealthy stepfather, denies any knowledge of the app's use by Alberta separatists to identify the names and addresses of supporters of a potential referendum on the province separating from Canada. Really, darling? Prove it. Prove you didn't know. Quote, I was not aware of the relationship, Ambassador Hoekstra told Press Progress, about the apparent collaboration between an Alberta separatist group called the Centurion Project and a Michigan-based right-wing political group called 10 Times Votes. David Parker, a far-right separatist organizer, cites 10 Times Votes as his inspiration for launching the Centurion Project and claims the American group has been quietly working with him behind the scenes for over a year. Mm-hmm. But the ambassador knew nothing about it. Really? He is personally acquainted with both the app's founder and the founder's wealthy stepfather. He's from Michigan. The guy's a wealthy Michigan Republican. But he has no knowledge. He's been actively trying to undermine us ever since he became ambassador, but he knows nothing about this. He has a history of undermining things. Oh, he did it when he was the ambassador of the Netherlands too, but we are supposed to believe that he was unaware. Oh, the fig leaf ye wear ith tinieth indeed. Wow. The issue of foreign support for Alberta's separatist group has been an open question since the U.S. State Department confirmed earlier this year that Trump administration officials had held multiple meetings with Alberta separatist leaders. The Centurion Project is currently under investigation by Elections Alberta, Alberta's Information and Privacy Commissioner, and the RCMP into how the group obtained private data about nearly 3 million Albertans allegedly sourced from the province's official list of electors. The massive data breach is being described as potentially one of the most significant privacy incidents in Canadian history. That information, which includes the names and residential addresses of millions of Alberta voters, was accessible to separatist activists through the app's database. One video leaked from a Centurion Project training call shows the group shared the home address of former Premier Jason Kenney. Elections Alberta alleges the Centurion Project obtained the list of electors from the Republican Party of Alberta, a registered provincial political party that advocates for Alberta independence. Unauthorized use of the list of electors and a $100,000 fine and 1 year in jail. Elections Alberta has indicated the separatist group is currently, quote, not cooperating with their investigation. Hopefully, that non-cooperation, when it comes time for it to be in front of a judge, will make it such that the maximum, however feeble it is, will be applied. And hopefully, someone in Alberta will run on upping the penalties for those crimes. Neither Parker nor his lawyer, Chad Williamson, answered questions because, of course, his lawyer's name is Chad. Neither Parker nor his lawyer, Chad Williamson, answered questions from Press Progress about the nature of the Centurion Project collaboration with 10 Times Votes Parker. However, discussed the subject at length on a recent podcast. No offense intended to anyone named Chad. There's lovely people named Chad out there. In fact, I have 2 friends named Chad. Sorry, I'm playing the stereotypes. Quote, in my travels in the United States, I've met a lot of political organizers. I've talked to a lot of people, and I stumbled across this group of Michigan called 10 Times Votes, Parker told a podcast last month. I was massively impressed with what they'd done, and I wanted to bring that idea and that methodology to Alberta, Parker explained. For almost 2 years, it'll be 2 years this fall, I've been working with them, talking with them, trying to build this out. And the result is the Centurion Project. Da, 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 da. Yeah, but you're supposed to use the technology in legal manners if you're going to do that, buddy. Just saying. The app, which Parker describes as the 10 times slash the Centurion Project app, the 10 times slash the that's hard to say. The 10 times slash the Centurion Project app targets low engagement voters who may lean one way or another politically but don't reliably show up to vote. The app attempts to solve this problem by asking supporters to use their database to identify 10 politically aligned friends, family, or neighbors who can be pressured into showing up to vote. Not convinced or persuaded. Pressured into showing up to vote. First rolled out during the 2024 U.S. presidential election, its backers tout 10 Times Vote as the secret weapon that helped deliver Michigan's 15 electoral college votes to Donald Trump. Michigan Republicans are currently holding statewide information sessions about 10 Times Votes in the hopes that the technology will help send right-wing candidates to Congress after this fall's midterm elections. A version of 10 Times Votes, Michigan's app reviewed by Press Progress, has a substantially similar interface and functionalities as the Centurion Project's app in Alberta. Prior to being appointed ambassador to Canada, Hoekstra served as the chair of the Michigan Republican Party and was one of the 10 Times Votes' most vocal public backers. But he was unaware. During multiple 2024 rallies alongside Trump and his running mate JD Vance, Hoekstra explicitly called on crowds of Trump supporters to download the 10-time Vote app in order to identify friends and family members to assist Trump's Get Out the Vote efforts. Remember this 10 times vote, Hoekstra told a November 2 2024 rally in Warren, Michigan. It is an app that you can download, and in real-time, up-to-date data, it will tell you where your friends and family have voted or not. Really? It's called 10 times votes, Hoekstra repeated. We need you to go out and get a few more folks to the polls so that we swamp the vote. Why? How would they be able to know if they voted or... Wow, okay. In addition to publicly endorsing and repeatedly promoting the app, 10 times votes also credited Hoekstra with leveraging his political connections to help the group organize in-person presentations to further promote their app. In-person presentations like the ones that Mr. Parker was hosting, or the Centurion Project were hosting at the time they decided to record it and put it on the web for all to see. Interesting. In his statement to Press Progress, the U.S. ambassador acknowledged having promoted 10 times vote app in his earlier role, but flatly denied any personal involvement or financial stake in the voter identification tool. Quote, I have zero involvement with 10 times vote, Ambassador Hoekstra told Press Progress. I have never had any financial relationship with 10 times votes. They were a potential tool offered for free to get out Republican voters for President Trump in 2024. I was chairman of the Michigan Republican Party, and it was my job to develop a winning campaign. U.S. State Department conflict of interest disclosure filings show Hoekstra resigned as Michigan GOP chair in February 2025 and did not report any business interests relating to the app. 10 times vote, which offers its services and access to its voter database for free in support of GOP candidates, has also been boosted by an unusual number of other influential but controversial MAGA figures. The app has been publicly endorsed by former Fox News host Tucker Carlson and the conspiracy theorist Alex Jones of the website InfoWars. The app was also showcased on an episode of former Trump's advisor Steve Bannon's podcast. 10 times vote, the assumed name of a company called Votatron LLC, is the brainchild of two West Michigan political operatives involved in social conservative activism who boast high-profile family connections. Drew Bourne, a Grand Rapids commercial real estate broker and the director of Votatron, is a well-connected Republican activist who runs a group called Michigan Family Action, of course, and previously ran for chair of the Michigan GOP. On social media, Bourne has promoted the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025 plan, posted photos of himself at Turning Point USA galas at Mar-a-Lago, and advocated the annexation of the Canadian provinces of Alberta and Saskatchewan. So they're helping out of the goodness of their hearts. Bourne is also directly connected to Ambassador Hoekstra. Bourne and Hoekstra are both listed as directors of the Mecosta Environmental and Security Alliance, a group opposing the construction of an EV battery manufacturing plant in West Michigan. Well, isn't that convenient? Notably, Bourne is also the stepson of Michigan businessman J.C. Huizinga, the owner of a chain of religious charter schools and an influential figure in local GOP politics. His mother, Tammy Bourne Huizinga, is a supporter of Trump Health Secretary RFK Jr.'s Make America Healthy Again agenda, who was recently appointed as a senior advisor to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The family's generational wealth is originally derived from garbage collection. That one would be too easy. And is part of an extended family tree that includes the late billionaire H. Wayne Huizinga, founder of Waste Management Incorporated and former owner of Blockbuster Video, as well as NFL's Miami Dolphins, MLB's Florida Marlins, and the NHL's Florida Panthers. Huizinga and Hoekstra have a personal history as well. Huizinga is an old donor to Hoekstra's past congressional campaigns, and the two served as campaign chairs for Mitt Romney's 2012 West Michigan leadership team. They also served as board members for the Netherlands America Foundation. Hoekstra was later appointed U.S. ambassador to the Netherlands, where he was accused of foreign interference after hosting an event for a Dutch far-right political party. Drew Weirda, the other founder of the 10 times vote apps, introduces himself as the nephew of Blackwater CEO Eric Prince, who is himself another former donor to Hoekstra's past congressional campaigns and the brother of Trump's first-term education secretary, Betsy DeVos. Bourne and Weirda are both alumni of Hope College in Holland, Michigan, a private Christian liberal arts school affiliated with the Dutch Reformed Church. Bourne and 10 times vote did not respond to numerous phone calls, emails, and direct messages sent over the span of a week, requesting clarification on the group's involvement with the Centurion Project, its connections with Ambassador Hoekstra, or its sources of funding. Gee, I wonder why. 10 Times Vote's business model is somewhat murky. The app describes itself as a service provided for free in support of Michigan Republicans and does not charge its users subscription fees, yet it does not publicly solicit donations through its website or indicate who funds it. Quote, we raise our own money, Lance Griffin, 10 Times Vote's head of public affairs, explained in a presentation to one state GOP last year. We don't ask for any donations. We've made this free and available to all of you, all the local county parties, and the Michigan Republican Party to access our website and our data. However, it funds itself. The group appears to have significant funds at its disposal. 10 Times Vote was a corporate sponsor of the 2025 Michigan GOP convention, Hoekstra's final event as party chair, and Parker claims the group spent another $50,000 sponsoring a VIP suite at the 2024 Tucker Carlson live event in Grand Rapids. According to Parker's story, he was also personally responsible for persuading Tucker Carlson to endorse 10 Times Vote app that night, and in turn, perhaps also responsible for Trump's election victory in Michigan. Quote, I used all of my political capital with Tucker to get them to endorse it on stage that night, Parker told a podcast. We tracked the result of that endorsement. That endorsement resulted in 86,000 people who are historically non-voters voting in that election. That's almost the victory margin for Trump. While it's unclear to what extent Trump's victory can be attributable to Parker's personal intervention, Carlson's production company did not respond to a request for comment from Press Progress. Again, gee, I wonder why. Carlson did indeed endorse the app that evening. Quote, I did hear of something really cool today, Carlson told his supporters at the Grand Rapids Van Andel Arena. I've never done anything like this before, but I'm going to do it now. There's actually a website in the state of Michigan where you can find people who would probably vote for the candidate you're voting for, but don't vote, Carlson said. It's called 10 Times Vote, and you can go on there and just contact people you know. Photos from the event that night show Pete Hoekstra was present in 10 Times Vote's Tucker Carlson and Kid Rock's VIP suite, where he sat next to 10 Times Voters head of public affairs, and again promoted the app. Oh my God. Jeez. In a statement to Press Progress, Elections Alberta said it is unable to confirm or deny if it is investigating any possible unauthorized use of electors' data by 10 Times Vote, explaining the agency, quote, is legislatively prohibited from commenting on complaints, allegations, or investigations we may or may not be reviewing or conducting. Maybe it shouldn't be. Elections Alberta noted it secured an interim injunction to stop the unauthorized use of the list of electors and had made efforts to identify and contact anyone who had access to or viewed the information in the list of electors. It also says it is legislatively empowered to investigate acts of foreign interference. Neither the Centurion Project nor 10 Times Votes answered questions seeking to clarify if any data about Alberta voters was stored on foreign servers or otherwise handled by the American company. 10 Times Votes likewise did not say if the US-based group had been contacted by Elections Alberta, Alberta's Information and Privacy Commissioner, or the RCMP. Ambassador Hoekstra told Press Progress it is the position of the United States government that US companies must act in accordance with domestic laws, but said the US government takes no position on US companies or political actors independently assisting secessionist groups in Canada. Well, of course you take no position on that. You should. We do. We would have a position on a Canadian group assisting a U.S. secessionist group. Quote, the U.S. government position is clear. U.S. companies must operate in Canada in accordance with Canadian law, Ambassador Hoekstra said. Who they work with in Canada is not our responsibility. Nobody said it was. Little defensive there, sir. So yeah, the plot, it thickens, doesn't it? Why am I not surprised? Why am I not surprised? But yeah, you're wondering why Ambassador Hoekstra may have decided at the last minute to not show up at that conference, given the news that was about to come out. Maybe it's a hypothesis. He wanted to stay as far away from Danielle Smith as possible on that particular day. She's toxic. She's slipping under. Oh man, speaking of her, and what's going on in Alberta there with that? Interesting column from the other day. Happy Victoria Day. Over the weekend leading up to our national celebration of Victorian imperialism and class inequality, prominent Alberta separatist Jeffrey Rath took to the internet appearing to advocate an internal United Conservative Party coup to remove Premier Danielle Smith. And again, let's not soft pedal this. This is indeed a coup that we are experiencing here. Her sin, in Mr. Rath's obvious estimation, is that she's been working too closely with Liberal Prime Minister Mark Carney and playing both sides of Independence Avenue in her efforts to keep the party's fraying coalition of outright separatists and traditional Canadian conservatives in one piece. We gonna rock down to Independence Avenue. And then we'll rig a vote app. Oh no. His solution: the separatist cadres, who now clearly control the UCP, but not quite yet either the government caucus or the provincial government, should dump her and replace her with a more ideologically acceptable leader and declare the party to be a separatist entity in the manner of the Parti Québécois. Arguably, this could either be a sign of Miss Smith's increasing strength thanks to her latest deal with Mr. Carney, or of the separatists' increasing strength as the holders of most of the internal power positions in the UCP party bureaucracy, or perhaps a bit of both. Miss Smith's strategy, as is well understood, has been to assert the only thing she can. Miss Smith's strategy, as is well understood, has been to assert that only she can successfully keep the open separatists now embedded in the party, caucus, and cabinet from scaring away electors accustomed to voting conservative without thinking too deeply about what the party nowadays represents. Likewise, as the vessel of Preston Manning's strategy of blackmailing the federal government into doing Alberta's bidding by threatening to become the 51st state, she is the only politician likely to be able to get away with perpetrating this political protection racket. Talk of an internal party coup, though, should be taken seriously because Mr. Rath, who is legal counsel and, for all practical purposes, the self-appointed spokesperson for the Stray Free Alberta petition, Prosperity Project, is extremely influential within Alberta's separatist faction. It is not clear if he has ambitions of his own in the new Alberta he hopes to create, but it is easy to assume that he must. So when Mr. Rath was so blunt about what he thinks should happen next in a series of social media posts yesterday, we should pay attention. He speaks for many in the UCP. Quote, Premier Smith has no mandate from her membership to sign the carbon tax MOU with Mark Carney, Mr. Rath posted at one point yesterday. Danielle Smith no longer enjoys the confidence of the members of the UCP. If that's not a call for a coup, I don't know what is. And also, again, puts the incredibly shrinking leader of the opposition, who has been suffering from sudden acute mutism, Pierre Poilievre, in a really interesting pickle, because Mr. Poilievre doesn't like any carbon taxes at all. But he claims to be a federalist. With who does he side? He says he wants pipelines. So does he side with Danielle Smith, who just accepted a carbon tax in exchange for a pipeline? Or does he side with Mr. Rath, who wants to break up the country, but the benefit is no pipelines and no carbon taxes? Oh, what is that line from the Little Mermaid? Life is full of tough choices in it. I love this. These people are, you can see how the web is being weaved, that there's no other choice but for them to eventually get ensnared or trip over the mess that they have made. You can see how the pieces are lining up, that they cannot possibly win with this. Enough is enough, he said in another post. We are a supermajority of the party. Time to take it back from the Kennyites. The Kennyites, remember, basically purged the Red Tories from the UCP after the former Premier Jason Kenney engineered the double reverse hostile takeover of the Progressive Conservative Party and the Wildrose Party in the summer of 2017. This is an irony, since those Red Tories, had they still been around in any numbers, could have saved Mr. Kenney's bacon in the fall of 2022. Oh well. Quote, here's another delivered Trump style in all caps. Danielle Smith has lost her mandate to lead the UCP! Exclamation mark. Mr. Rath's message to the cadres in the UCP writing constituency associations, also in all caps. Make sure to attend your local CA board AGM and elect a slate of pro-independence board members. Contact your local APP or stay-free regional leaders for guidance. We need to work to replace every non-independence board in the province, he said in part in another post. All these messages were posted on X, the social media platform previously known as Twitter, a place a lot of moderate Albertans nowadays sensibly eschew, if only to keep their blood pressure down. Someone has to look in there, however, and I'm willing to take the risk so the rest of you don't have to. If this was more than just an anticipatory outburst of exuberance in memory of the late grandmother of Europe's titled classes, it suggests Danielle Smith's, quote, United Conservative Coalition could actually be starting to fracture. It's worth noting that the separatists on social media are also infuriated by the possibility that when the pipe gets laid, it may not follow the route most of them prefer. That is the one most likely to annoy the most British Columbians and First Nations along the way to Prince Rupert. The British Columbia city of that name and the terminus of the Alberta separatist imagined Danzig corridor to the sea, that is, not the first governor of the late Hudson's Bay Company, just to be clear. Meanwhile, speaking of Independence Avenue, a metaphor lest you tried to look it up on Google Maps, Edmonton City Councillor Michael Jans yesterday announced that he had applied on behalf of many of his constituents to rename the road in front of Alberta Legislature Forever Canadian Avenue. Mr. Jans, councillor for Ward Papistu, located just across the North Saskatchewan River from the legislature, said the renaming of the 2 blocks of 99th Avenue between 107th Street and 109th will, quote, celebrate the largest nonpartisan citizen movement in Alberta's history. The Forever Canadian petition collected signatures from Albertans who want Alberta to proudly remain a Canadian province. Mr. Jans explained in a statement. This effort was prompted as a response to Premier Danielle Smith encouraging conversations about Alberta's separation. The petition gathered 456,000 signatures and motivated more than 10,000 Albertans to volunteer in support of this work. Mr. Jans, who is a tireless progressive activist, not unprepared to be a gadfly if that's what it takes to accomplish something, was accompanied to an outdoor news conference yesterday by Forever Canadian petition proponent Thomas Lukasik, a former progressive conservative deputy premier of Alberta. Mr. Jans will make application to the Edmonton Naming Committee, an independent body of volunteers appointed by the city. He pointed out that there is a precedent when another city councillor successfully applied in 2018 to have a city road renamed Canadian Forces Trail. If Mr. Jans succeeds with this one, it will drive the UCP and Stay Free Alberta nuts. Things are happening in Alberta. But yeah, not great for Danielle, and separatists are really mad. So we'll see what she does to try to earn their favor, I guess. One last little thing. Actually, this one's not a little thing. There is, with everything that's going on in the world, we're talking about the economy, there's something that might be happening at the moment that could be changing the game rather significantly, and could have a lot of things that are being stated now have to be restated in relatively short order. According to US CNBC, and you know that I talk, if you follow the show, I talk about this a lot, about bond yields, and you know how the Prime Minister understands the bond market, and that's all kind of our secret weapon, and how the United States is putting itself in trouble with regard to its bonds. While there's been a significant change, this is published yesterday in CNBC, U.S. Treasuries have entered a, quote, danger zone as surging long-term yields raise fears that sticky inflation and hawkish rate expectations could begin spilling over into equities and broader risk assets, says HSBC. The sell-off in government bonds intensified Tuesday, pushing the 30-year Treasury yield above 5.19% to its highest level since 2007. Meanwhile, the benchmark 10-year yield climbed towards 4.69%. Yields on the 30-year are up slightly less than 1 basis point as of, well, this is yesterday, so this is not important for this particular article here, because it's giving an immediate report. But the main thing is just the overall trend, the rise here. Quote, U.S. Treasuries are now firmly in the danger zone, the level of 10-year U.S. Treasuries that tends to put pressure on virtually all asset classes. HSBC strategists wrote in a note late Tuesday, warning that further repricing in terminal rate expectations could drive yields even further into the danger zone, likely leading risk assets temporarily lower. The bank said markets have so far remained relatively resilient because corporate earnings growth has stayed robust. Valuations had already partly adjusted before the recent Iran tensions, and investors still broadly believe the Middle East conflict will mostly just affect oil. The moves in yields are psychologically significant, particularly after the 30-year Treasury auction cleared above 5% for the first time since 2007, according to Interactive Brokers chief strategist Steve Sosnick. And that's something that I had been watching for because it was being seen as some type of psychological barrier. It says here that current market conditions are a yellow alert rather than a red alert, Sosnick said, adding that a move towards 4.65% on the 10-year yield or 5.5% on the 30-year bond could trigger more acute market stress. And give you a look at this here. Here's I'm going to bring up the graph of the U.S. 30-year bond for you, and then take a look at it. Now, on this front here, when the bond market gets affected, everything else gets affected here as well. Sorry. This is the Canadian 30-year bond. Sorry, not the U.S. one. So it's here. I was going to show it to you anyway. But here, see, we're at 3.992. We did cross 4% yesterday, very briefly, while all that was going on. And you can see ours here has been pulled up a little bit. And this happens frequently. Ours closed at 4.02 yesterday. When the US goes up sharply, ours tends to pull up. However, ours did not pull up as much as the US's did in this crisis, or in this crisis as a not crisis, but in this shock. The United States is at 5.161%. And whoops, let's bring the graphic down. Let's see, there we go. There we go. If you look here, it is definitely going up sharply from 4.6 at the end of February all the way to 5.1, and it's going up way faster. So there's a spread happening between the US and Canadian bond yields that could have an impact on our dollar. It could make it such, how would I put it? Oh, can't remember what if it's up or down on the off the top of my head. So I'm going to have to go back and check that because I do not want to mislead you on that one. But it has an effect, definitely has an effect on our purchasing power. And our ability to export as well. Also, of course, has an impact on our ability to import as well. If we are looking at the 10-year Treasury here, we're looking at 4.637 here. Again, you will notice this sharp increase, particularly since April 17th, where it's gone up from 4.24 to 4.6. And again, this is the highest it's been in a year, and some of the highest it's been since the end of COVID here over the last 5 years. If we are looking at the Canadian one, this one as well, you will notice that we had a little spike up, but again, right, not as big, 3.47 to at its peak, about 3.69 or 3.64 here. So basically what's happening is that investors are demanding a greater rate of return in order to borrow U.S. To invest in the U.S. And I'm wondering right now if those screens actually just went up or not while I was talking, or whether or not I was just talking and that you guys didn't see anything. Because I thought that I had transferred the screen correctly, but when I came back to, you were seeing no graphs. I thought so. Restream, you are killing me. So frustrating. Okay. I will show them to you. Here you go. This here is okay. Things are not cooperating with me here today. Okay. So here, the Canadian 10-year, and you will see here just recently, May 8th, we were down at 3.47% with 3.64. But if you compare it to the US one, you see how much more sharply it's going up here in this graph. And this is the same data happening for the 30-year as well. So this is the US 30-year. And again, we see just recently, if we go back to February 27th here, we see we're at 4.63, but it's just going up and up and up and up really quickly. And the Canadian one, you see it being pulled up by what's going on with the US. But again, nowhere near as sharply here. We were at around the same time at the end of February at 3.62. So we are moving directionally with the United States. We're being pulled up, but we're not being pulled up as sharply and as fast as it is. And that is what's creating the spread for us. And that can have a lot of different impacts for us here. Let me see if I have it. I was looking it up this morning. And unfortunately, do not have the thing here. I must have read it and closed the thing. So we'll go back to the article here and go back into what it means for us, because what they mean are saying that this is in the danger zone. So it says here that current market conditions, as I said before, are a yellow alert rather than red alert, Sosnick said, adding that a move towards 4.65 on the 10-year yield or 4.5 on the 30-year bond could trigger more acute market stress. We are in the ballpark for all intents and purposes. We're getting closer to if 5.5 is market stress in the United States, or sign of increased market stress here. We are at 5.156 currently at the moment. And for the 10-year, if they are saying 4.65 on that one, it's at 4.625 right at the moment. So very, very close to that one. And the 10-year Treasury one is the one that is used often, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, to set things like mortgage rates and things of the like. So again, if you're looking at the United States, right, the cost of food going up, the cost of everything going up because of tariffs, and then of course with what's going on with the war, those costs going up then, and now if you've got bond treasuries going up and people renewing mortgages and their cost of living, so things in the United States are not, they're not happy on the macroeconomic level, not like here, right? Our inflation came in at 2.8%. I think the United States one came in at around 3.8 or 3.9. There is warehouse information. I think it was warehouse inflation. It is, or wholesale inflation is actually at 6.6%. Came in at 6.6% in April for the United States, and that is. I won't go as far as saying alarmingly high, but you really need to pay attention. Further moves may also start affecting stocks, according to BMO capital market strategist Ian Lingen. If 30-year yields climb towards 5.25 in coming weeks, and we're not far about, we're just one basis points around short of that at the moment, there will be a more durable pullback in equity valuations, he said. So basically, um, those of us who have been looking, who have had some investments and have been looking at our pension funds doing well, this could be, how would you put it, something that will start sending the prices of those shares somewhat downward. Let's see here if there's any more information I can get here. Let's try here. Yahoo Finance. Bond yields near 2 decades among investors. A surge in longer maturity U.S. Treasury yields is testing the resolve of global bond investors toward the possibility of locking in the rates near the highest gates and the risk of a greater sell-off. It says here, with the Treasury 30-year yield at a whisker away from the highest since 2007, a team at Goldman Sachs sees some emerging measures of value but urges caution. The head of BlackRock's research unit is recommending investors reduce their exposure to developed market government bonds in favor of equities. And a lot of people are wondering if this is the thing that might pop a little bit of the tech and the AI bubble, which has been fueling most of the market. Just remember, it would affect the Canadian dollars lower, is because if people are chasing the higher yield and buying more American bonds than Canadian bonds, it could lower the Canadian dollar. However, if the yields start getting so high that people start wondering whether or not the United States will be good on paying out the coupon rate for their investment. And again, you have to understand that we are now dealing with President Donald Trump, a man who is famous for stiffing people. Can you really foresee if interest rates on the bonds go much higher, particularly if Donald Trump wants the Fed Reserve guy to lower interest rates? And that doesn't look like it's going to happen now. If he just decides, well, you know what, the interest rates is too high, that's too much money going out of our treasury, I'm not paying the rate this year, and then see what happens to to the stock markets, right? So at some point, even though there's a point when this happens where the United States starts to be considered a riskier bet, where people will buy the bonds for the bigger yield, but there comes a time eventually, if you continue down this road, where you're considered so risky a bet that people are not necessarily sure that you're going to pay, and then you lose people investing into your bonds. The levels that the bond yield rates are at now have Wall Street dealers flagging the prospect of even higher, longer dated yields as inflation concerns ripple across markets. Jim McCormick, Citi London's based macro rate strategist, says the market focus is likely to shift to a test of 5.5%, a level last registered in June 2004. A Bank of America survey of fund managers shows 62% think a big move in yields over the next year will drive 30-year government borrowing costs above 6%. The long bond last traded above that threshold in June 2000, when the Federal Reserve's policy rate sat at 6.5%. Vanguard Group's Incorporated global head of fixed income, Sarah Devereux, meanwhile said yields in the 31 trillion market are near the top of the expected range for 10-year notes. So just bringing this to your attention, because what it could also lead to is a dumping of treasury bonds, and this is where things can all get a little messy. According to Fortune magazine's Jason Ma, it says he's going back to when we were looking at Japan, for example, back in the day. For decades, Japanese government bonds offered minuscule returns there to look abroad, especially at U.S. funds. Japanese investors now own about 1 trillion in treasuries, and they are the largest foreign holders of U.S. But that could soon as the Bank of Japan has been hiking rates while hotter inflation has lifted JGB yields, which are now looking more attractive and emerging as an alternative to the treasury bonds. Again, one of the reasons I've been saying the Prime Minister picks up the phone, places a couple phone calls, one to Germany, one to Japan, and maybe one to Brazil because Brazil has no fucks left to give. Um, uh, there could be some very easy to coordinate some bond action that could put the United States in a very, very difficult situation. Yields for 10 and 30-year JGBs, this year Japanese bonds, have soared to the highest levels since the 1990s, and the central bank is expected to tighten for time since 2024 as the Iran war sends oil prices higher. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Sane Takeshi is seen boosting government spending as part of her efforts to revive growth and inflationary trends. Of course, U.S. yields have also risen as inflation picks, but the Reserve's next move is still expected to be cut, though that timeline is getting pushed back further, perhaps into 2027. There are already signs that money is being repatriated as March saw the largest monthly inflow ever into Japanese sovereign bond funds. The new money that's being put to work won't be put to work overseas, Mark Dowding, chief investment officer at Blue Bay, told the Financial Times. It won't be going into U.S. corporate bonds. It won't be going into U.S. treasuries. It will be going into those domestic allocations. The asset manager launched its first Japanese bond fund in March, underscoring the sea change that has taken place in the market. Next month, investors widely anticipate the Bank of Japan to lift rates again, sending the benchmark from a three-decade high of 0.785% to 1%. That will cap a stunning reversal after the central bank maintained ultra-low rates and even negative rates for several years to fight deflation amid a stagnating economy. Matt Smith, a fund manager at Rufford, told the Financial Times that he's betting on the yen appreciating as Japanese investors put more of their money in domestic assets. Pressure is building, long-end domestic rising, he predicted, and the institutional framework is now, please, can you bring this money home? We think yen strength will happen slowly, then quickly. But if investors dump U.S. debt en masse, that could force the Treasury to offer even higher yields to attract other buyers. The market has quickly deteriorated with a series of debt auctions over the past weekend drawing muted demand. As a result, the Treasury Department sold $25 billion of 30-year bonds at 5% yield for the first time since 2007. Before then, no 33-year Treasury carried an interest rate above 4.75%. It was a stark contrast from mid-February, just before the U.S.-Israeli war in Iran started, when a Treasury offering saw the highest demand ever in the histories of the 30-year auctions. Skittishness among bond investors is becoming a trend. In March, auctions for 2, 5, and 7-year Treasury notes all saw weak demand, forcing yields to go higher than expected. At the same time, a flood of corporate bonds is competing with the Treasury for investors' dollars, putting a more upward pressure on yields. And foreign central banks have retreated from the U.S. bond market in recent years, with more price-sensitive hedge funds taking their place as buyers. Higher yields boost interest costs, which are running at $1 trillion a year, worsening the budget deficit and piling on even more to the total debt burden. The deficit is already on a troubling path this year. Last week, the Treasury Department announced it expects to borrow more than anticipated this quarter as incoming cash flow has been softer than initially projected. Gee, really? Like nobody told you that was going to be the case doing what you're doing. For Mark Malik, Chief Investment Officer at Siebert Financial, the borrowing update is the latest example of the immense supply of fresh debt that the Treasury Department is issuing. In a recent blog post titled "The Bond Market is Shouting," he pointed out that the Fed has cut the benchmark rate by 175 basis points since mid-2024, but the 10-year Treasury yield has only dipped by 35 basis points, while the 30-year yield touched 5%. That kind of disconnect is not normal, Malik warned. In fact, analysts who have tracked the relationship between Fed policy and long-term yields going back to 1990 describe it as unprecedented. The bond market is not broken. It is sending a message. And if you know how to listen, it is shouting. And fortunately, we have a prime minister who happens to be an expert in that and knows what it is saying. And clearly, we have a U.S. administration that is not particularly to the danger causing for itself. These two kits and cubs will be at point instances I apologize, kits and cubs. I have no idea. Am I even on? Oh, God, this platform is killing me. All right. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Internet must have dipped. Uh, so yeah, I have, again, I am not moving. I do not know if you can hear me. This is very weird. Nope. Okay. Uh, let's see. Nothing. What the hell? All right. How's that? I am frozen again. Apparently, you can hear me from what I'm um, detecting here on the YouTube feed. I cannot see a thing. The screen has gone completely black. Um, I can't change anything. I cannot exit the program. I I am kind of stuck in limbo here at the moment. This is, oh God, I can't believe I have to go through a full year with this damn platform. Okay, there we go. Apparently, I am back. However, I have no idea when it is I left and what it is I was saying. at the time that I left. So you know what, kids and cubs, I am just going to end the show. I'm I'm really sorry. I do not know why this is happening constantly with this platform. Let me see. Maybe I can see where I was. Okay. Okay, that's where I went silent. No, I can't figure out where I was in the story. But basically, suffice it to say, unfortunately, that it seems that in the bond markets itself, people are noticing that the state of the U.S. is not a good bet. The United States, the level of debt that it is accumulating, its ability to serve that debt is now starting to come into question. And again, uh, it wouldn't take much, like I said, for um, a group of the nations, like I said, if the prime minister placed a strategic phone call to Germany, a strategic phone call to Japan, and there was some coordinated movement for some sell-offs of some bonds and treasuries that could definitely reshape what is going on in the United States. The Fortune uh, magazine article that I was reading here uh, finished. I'll read the end paragraph because it was the important part here. It says, in a recent blog post titled "The Bond Market is Shouting," he pointed out, and the person that he's talking about here is Mark Malik, Chief Investment Officer at Seabit Financial. Um, in a recent blog posted, "The Bond Market is Shouting," he pointed out that the Fed has cut the benchmark rate by 175 basis points since mid-2024, but the 10-year Treasury yield has only dipped by about 35 basis points, while the 30-year yield touched 5%. So with all the cutting of interest rates that it has been doing, that's not showing up really in those yields. And Malik says that kind of disconnect is not normal. In fact, analysts who have tracked the relationship between Fed policy and long-term yields going back to 1990 describe it as unprecedented. The bond market is not broken, it is sending a message. And if you know how to listen, it is shouting. And fortunately, at this time, we do happen to have a prime minister who happens to, who would probably be able to write the book on the bond market. So he's clearly hearing what the market is shouting, and that could potentially be for us some points of leverage when it comes to our negotiations with the United States, because the path that they're on uh, it seems to not be a good one, and they seem to be hurtling down it, and they seem to be picking up speed. So we want to be careful, and we definitely do not want a slice of that action. But it also makes it such that should someone want to give the United States a little nudge or a little push, a little further down that hill, that they could. That all of this is no longer necessarily in the hands or under the control of the United States unless they make some really rapid decisions. And given that the United States, the president wants the U.S. Treasury, the Fed, or the FOMC, I should say, to lower interest rates, to mask his incompetence, to artificially lower the cost of living, that is not going to be compatible with rising rate yields in the 10-year or 30-year. And again, the 10-year is one of the ones that a lot of um, the interest rates that most affect us, like our mortgage and credit card debt and all that kind of stuff, is based on. So yeah, it is going to be very interesting. Kitsasi says, try running tomorrow without a green screen. I have no idea if that would help. I just noticed you aren't frozen when it's off. You know what? I am going to try that. I'll just see if I can put a different backdrop behind me and see if that works, because this should not be happening. Again, this is pretty much brand new. 'Cause the old thing I had was super old, and I mean, we did phrase sometimes, but not like this. and not at regular intervals. And we certainly not to the point of just, Restream itself shutting itself down and booting us out of it and us having to re-enter and log in. Again, um, the changes they made since we registered for this are not good ones. Not good ones. I have a feeling that when it comes time to renew, that we will have to be looking for another platform because this one is just not reliable anymore, unfortunately. All right, kids and cubs, that's the end of our episode. We hope that you enjoyed listening to us because we enjoyed making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do. If you would like to help us, kids and cubs, there are two ways you can do that. The first way is by scanning this QR code, which will be our YouTube page. If you are not there already, if you go there, please click on like, share, and subscribe because that's with the algorithm. And if you are viewing this episode not live and within 7 days of it being broadcast, and if you're watching it on your phone, if you go to where the comment section is and you give a little swipe left, I believe it is, it will bring you to the opportunity to give us some hype points. We would really appreciate that. And just to let you know that you are only allowed to give us hype points about 3 times a week. So please, if you can, we would appreciate them if you haven't used them all up. And if you could use them on us, we would be grateful because they help smaller broadcasters like us gain more audience. Another way that you can help us, kids and cubs, is financially. We do incur some costs to bring this show to you. And as I noted yesterday, it seems that there is some type of push going on to suppress certain channels. And currently we have been affected by it. On the upside, it seems that our ability to post to our Twitter feeds has been restored. Don't know if that was as a result of me complaining and stating, I do not know why it is that we are being flagged as a spam account. We are not. Absolutely everything we do there, I enter manually. And so we have no machines to help it. I'm just particularly diligent about promoting our shows. So, but yes, we have had our privileges returned, but we are still going to maintain our policy of making our primary news feed our Blue Sky accounts. So if you can follow us there, if you are not already, that would be preferable. It's not that we're going to stop posting to X totally, but there's no point investing ourselves in trying to make ourselves grow on that platform. If at any time they could just unilaterally decide you're a spammer, shut you down for a few days, and not tell you when it is you're going to be come back, or why it is, or give you any way to appeal. Anyway, yeah, I think the move for us is permanent for now. It's permanent for now. It's permanent. I think at some point you have enough of being yanked around. At one point it was about not losing the investment that we spent so much years building, but now it's especially with what happened to Frankie, where your accounts can just be hijacked from you and all that kind of stuff, and no way to appeal right to. What's the point? So the journalists are still there, so we have to be there in order to be able to keep our finger on the pulse. But in terms of making that our primary news feed to communicate outward, that's probably that's done now. So please, if you can find us at True Eager at Blue Sky, and the same thing for my personal account. For those of you who are following me over there, I'm going to do the same thing for that one as well. So that's where you will find us most often nowadays. But it's good at least that the thing has been lifted, so we can at least let people know when we are on and when we have a new show, and that type of stuff, and help promote our friends, of course, who have helped us along the way. So please, if you would like to support us, and thank you to Kit Taviji for your very kind, enthusiastic expression of encouragement yesterday. Means the world. Will definitely be put to good use and come in handy. And if you can help, please do. We know that times are tight, however, so if you're not able, do not worry, because the gifts of your attention are the ones that matter the most to us. And we would like to hear from you. So please write to us at truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com if you would like to. And let us know what you think about the show and offer some guest suggestions if you have for the interview project. If you have any questions about the show or about politics you'd like us to answer, please put them there. We would very much appreciate hearing from you there. I'm a little thrown, as you can tell. That thing just threw me, and I'm a little out of sorts. So this is not as smooth as it could be, which of course is making the whole thing take longer than it should. I'm gonna, you know what? I'm just gonna skip the other stuff. Kids and Cubs. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm really thrown. So any support that you can give there, much appreciated. If you can, Kits and Cubs, at the count of 3, can you just say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock on 1, 2, and 3. Thank you so very much. I hear you, and here is a little do just for you. Again, things just doing what they want to again. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, Cubs, I'm not going to test this much longer, the patience of this much longer. While it's working, amour et bisous. We'll see you tomorrow. Sorry that the end of this episode just really ended in a bit of a flop. We'll do better tomorrow, I guess. All right. Bye.